Good morning. Welcome to the sunroom. It is 5 o'clock somewhere, and that somewhere is in the sunroom right now, and that 5 o'clock is a.m. It is 5 o'clock in the morning. As I'm recording this, we are heading out to Texas for Easter right after this, and so I had to get up early, but I wanted to get this episode recorded because I want to tell you guys about my weekend with Dusty Slay in Kentucky and St. Louis. And it was super fun. Got some fun, interesting stories. I learned some really important lessons. I think that might be the most interesting part of this episode, is talking about what I learned, what I will take with me going forward in the rest of my comedy career, and honestly, some stuff I learned just to take with me in life. And I hope that those are lessons that will be helpful to you as well. Thank you so much for listening to all the other episodes, the first 2 episodes, for liking and commenting and subscribing to my YouTube channel, subscribing on Apple and Spotify. Please continue to do that. This is early on in the podcast, and that's really, really helpful. Every little action you take is very helpful, so please keep doing that. And but I would like to get right into our story. I don't like doing long intros because I want to get right into the story. So this is your third sunroom story. I almost freaked out in front of 3,000 people in St. Louis. Keyword is almost. Key fact is that I did not, but it was close. Before we get to that, let's back all the way up to how did I even get to do shows in Paducah, Kentucky and St. Louis, Missouri with Dusty Slay, one of the biggest, most famous, most popular comedians in the world right now. And it's an interesting story. I could honestly, it would be a really fun thing one day to trace it all the way back to, if you remember episode 1, where I talk about my very first show in comedy. I could probably pretty easily trace all the way back, person to person, each person that I met that gave me an opportunity in all of those things. But I won't do that because that would take up the entire episode. But the most immediate answer is I met Dusty at Zany's in December of 2025. I did a show called Nateland Live. It's a Monday night clean comedy showcase that's kind of put on by Nate Bargatze. Now, Nate is not there all of the time. Most of the time he's not. But actually, this was a show right before Christmas, and I did it with Fiona Colley, who is unbelievable. If you don't know Fiona, please look her up. She's, blowing up, so you should absolutely know who she is. Dusty Slay, Brian Bates, and then Nate Bargatze himself was there, and it was incredible. And I'll probably tell that story as a sunroom story because there's so much there. But one of the coolest parts about that was that after the show in the parking lot, I went over and saw Dusty smoking a cigar. Cigars will become a big part of this story, on the back of his truck. And I started talking to him. I was just telling him, hey, great to meet you. And we'll see you later. And then Nate kind of came up to us as he was leaving. And we ended up talking, just me, Dusty, Nate, and a couple other people for like 45 minutes in the parking lot. So I got to know Dusty through that. But he did not see my set. He'd never seen me do comedy. And then I had done a show with Brian Bates at the Comedy Catch here in Chattanooga. I had done a guest spot for him. I did about 7 or 8 minutes, and Dusty's parents, or Dusty's mom and sister and their husbands, were there. They live in the Chattanooga area. So I met them. They had called me over because they wanted me to go tell Brian that they were there. And we actually hit it off really well. My son is a huge NASCAR fan, my 6-year-old son, and they were wearing a Ryan Blaney shirt. And actually my 2-year-old son, his favorite driver is Juan Blaney. So I talked to them for a long time. So we hit it off well. I'm actually wearing my Tony Stewart shirt right now because my son and I are going to the Bristol race, which would be next weekend when this episode comes out. But anyway, I had a little bit of a rapport with Dusty's family, and I had messaged him on Instagram like, hey, I met your family. They were great. And, we had a really fun time. But he had never seen me perform. So I reached out to Dusty on Instagram a few weeks later, and I said, hey, I see you have a show in Paducah, Kentucky in March. I'm kind of close to that in Chattanooga. I mean, it's 4 hours away, but I said, I'm kind of close to that. if you don't have an opener for that show, I would love to open for you. And I think I might have said a little bit of my resume, which was, that I had performed in 3, theaters opening for George Janko. I'd worked with Brian. And I think I may have said, I could send you some clips if you're interested, but I don't remember if I gave much of a resume. And he said, well, I do have somebody, but I'll let you do 10 minutes if you want. I was like, I mean, absolutely. And I'm thinking like, 10 minutes unpaid. I'll drive 4 hours, do 10 minutes in a theater for Dusty Slay and drive back the same night if I need to. Like, that's how much I want something like this. So I said yes. And then, didn't want to bother him, didn't ask him too many questions over the next couple months, but I kind of popped in every once in a while to his DMs, just trying to, remind him like, hey, remember we agreed to this thing, but I really didn't want to push it too much. And then, I think I asked him one question about a month out, just kind of like a confirmation type question. Like, I want to make sure that this is still legit, because it was all very, just me and him talking. And then he said, hey, do you want to do the St. Louis show the night after? And I was like, oh, so, I mean, now it goes from like a one-time 10-minute offer to like on the road with Dusty Slay. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I agreed to that. He booked me hotel rooms, which was super nice. And then I hear him on his podcast like a week before, or maybe it was on the Public Figures podcast. But either way, he said, these are bigger theaters than I'm normally doing, and I've sold both of them out. Like they're gonna sell out, and these are bigger theaters than I've done. And I was like, wait a second. And I looked it up, and Paducah was an 1,800 person theater, and then St. Louis was about a 3,000 seater. And I was like, okay, man, he must have watched like some clips. Like he must trust me like a lot. And so I drive to Paducah and meet Dusty there, and we go over to the theater, and we're all just hanging out, and we walk out in that theater, and I look up and I'm like, man, this place is huge. And then I thought, but tomorrow's bigger than this. I mean, it was massive. And Paducah is not a huge town, so people were driving in from a long way away, 2 or 3 hours away for this show, which was that added. I know, it added kind of an element of excitement and just importance to it. Like people have planned like their weekends around coming to Paducah, Kentucky for this show. And I'm going to be the first person they see. And so the other person on the show was Will O'Donnell, who's from St. Louis, and he's a great comic. I had never met him before, but I'd heard a lot of good things, and really enjoyed hanging out with him this weekend and getting to work with him. And he's so funny. And so the first show, I go out there and it goes great. I mean, I walk out, you could feel the energy of a crowd that big. It's a little strange because like the laughter does take a second to kind of come all the way up to you on stage. It's not so immediate like at a comedy club. And fortunately, I had worked theaters before, so I understood a lot of that dynamic. And this was a great theater. It was not an old theater. It was a new theater. But the lighting and everything set up was really good. So I could only see the front 2 rows because of the lights. And I go out there and I mean, the set goes as well as I could expect in that circumstance. I mean, when you're the first comic out, it's always going to be tough, but it went really great. And I finished my set. I'm like right on the money, right at 10 minutes. That's, I was really, pumped about that. And I finished the set and I immediately just go like, hey, that's my time. Thank you so much. Welcome your next comic, Will O'Donnell. And I get off stage and I'm like, kind of nervous. What is Dusty going to say? And he gives me a fist bump. And he goes, hey, when you say, that's my time, thank you. He goes, stand up there and get your applause. He was like, receive your applause. Like you did a good job. Get your cheers and then introduce the next comic. He was like, you got to, stay up there for a second. And I mean, honestly, I felt like that is the best advice that someone could give you, because that means like, hey, you did a good job and you should stay on stage a little bit longer and get those cheers. Because my whole thing is like, when you're working a comedy club, especially when you're the host, you got to just get off the stage, right? Your job is just get off the stage. And so the fact that he was like, stay on the stage for a minute felt really good. And that show was awesome. Will crushed, and then Dusty. I mean, he's Dusty. He did like almost an hour and a half. People were loving it. That was a pretty rowdy crowd. They were really like shouting out a lot, and I missed a lot of the ending because Will and I were out selling our merch. I sell these stickers, and I sold so many stickers. I mean, I had a guy come up and he just bought all of the stickers I had, and then was like, give them out. And then I tried to give them out, and people were like, no, I'd rather pay for them. So I was like double selling stickers. I mean, that's how generous people were. And, by far, I think the most generous crowd I've ever been around were these two shows with Dusty. So we do those shows. And I remember asking Dusty after my set, I said, hey, like, that's the first time you've ever seen me perform, right? And he goes, yeah, you did great. And I was like, Can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah. I was like, why did you book me in front of 1,800 and tomorrow 3,000 people if you've never seen me perform? Like, that takes a lot of faith. I was like, I appreciate it, but why? And he said, well, he goes, well, if you've worked with Brian, I know you work clean. And if you're getting booked regularly at the Comedy Catch, I trust them. So I know that you're decent and you work clean. He's like, so the worst case scenario is you go up there for 10 minutes and you just aren't funny, but you don't alienate my audience or make people mad. And I was like, okay. He's like, we're better than that. That's good, and I was like, well, look, I can't believe you had that much faith in me, and I really appreciate it. And, thank you. And so that was really validating that like the work I've been putting in to get booked at the Comedy Catch. I mean, to try to do opportunities like working with Brian, and just taking whatever opportunity comes along and pushing for more paid off. And so, yeah, that was really validating. And so if you know anything about Dusty, then you know that the man loves cigars. And that is like his big thing. It's like he loves cigars. And so after shows, he goes and finds a cigar bar or sits outside and smokes a cigar with his openers, and then sometimes with fans, sometimes with friends in town or whatever. And so it was actually pretty cold in Paducah, like it kind of a random cold snap, and so he didn't want to do it outside, so he found a cigar bar that had agreed to stay open for us. And we go in, and there's a couple other people in there. A guy named Bryce, who's a comedian in Southern Illinois that that Dusty and Will knew. He hung out with us. He and his wife, Athena. A guy that goes by the name of Big Whiskey was there, talking a lot about whiskey. And I was the only one that drank whiskey. So I talked to him about whiskey, but I ran out of my whiskey knowledge real fast. But Big Whiskey, great guy, super friendly. Can't remember his real name, but he goes by Big Whiskey, so I'm going to call him that. But yeah, we had a great hang at the cigar bar, and I don't smoke cigars. I just I don't. It's not my favorite thing, but I've also never like really had good cigars or anything like that. So it's not I'm not like morally opposed to it. I don't like how everything smells smoky afterwards. So I actually brought a change of clothes. I was smart about this. After the show, took my my show clothes off and put on more comfortable clothes that I knew I was gonna be throwing out, for the rest of the weekend because they were gonna smell smoky. So we go in the humidor, Will and I and Dusty and the cigar people. They're talking real cigar terms. Cigars are just like wine or beer or whiskey or anything where people, or tea. I mean, things where people get really, really into it, and there's like an acquired taste. And then the more you're into it, the more you know what you want and what you don't want, and the more serious you take it. Well, I mean, I've had a few cigars in my life. Frankly, when my friends and I go on camping trips, I bring a pack of Black and Milds and I smoke them with the wood tips because I think it's funny, and also it's mild. And so I do a bit. It's basically this might be surprising to people, but I'm doing a bit. But I thought that'd be weird if I broke out these Black and Milds in a cigar bar. So the guy's walking Dusty through all the cigars. He's asking us what we want, and me and Will are kind of looking at each other. And Will, I think, knows more than me, but he hadn't, smoked in a while or whatever. But we were just like, yeah, we'll take these. This guy had mentioned they sounded fine. So we get those and we light them up, and I'm, kind of fumbling around, even trying to get this thing lit. I can't even figure out the lighter at first. It was so complicated. But, Dusty buys everybody cigars, and we hang out and we smoke our cigar, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. Like, I thought it was pretty good, and the hang was incredible. Just hanging out, chatting with people, listening to Dusty stories, talking to Will. Will and I bonded very much over baseball. But the funny thing is, Will finished his cigar, and he had like a little bit left. He put it on the thing, and Dusty was like, "Oh, I'll finish that off." Dusty, he's never seen a cigar. He doesn't want to finish off. So he grabs it, he puffs on it, and goes, "Ah." He's like, they give you like a sweet one. What is that, vanilla flavor? He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I would have picked a better cigar for you guys. That one is nasty." And me and Will looked at each other. We were like, "I kind of liked it." He was like, "Really?" We're like, this is this is the guy that's paying for everything. This is like he's a friend at this point. But like also we're like, oh, yeah. I mean, maybe we didn't like it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we should have liked it? No, I said, Dusty, it's like people who don't drink liquor, like a real sugary, sweet, fruity liquor drink. And then people like big whiskey want just the straight whiskey with all the, flavor of the whiskey. It's kind of like that. I was like, I want the fruity cigar. That sounds like I meant something else. I'm going to take that back. I don't want the fruity cigar. I want the hardcore, darkest cigar. Okay, now it feels, this is not what I want to say at all. I want whatever cigar you want to give. I don't know what you know what? Let's stop talking about cigars for a minute. No, it was a great hang. And then after that, we actually went back to the hotel and sat outside in the courtyard at the Courtyard Marriott and smoked some more. And this time I did break out my Black & Milds because I was like, I'm going to smoke my Black & Milds because I don't want another cigar. And tell you what, Will also enjoyed the Black & Mild. So I won a new fan to Black & Milds. And we sat and it was great. I mean, it was just such an interesting, cool situation that I'm sitting there with a guy like that I've been watching for a really long time that I admire quite a bit. And we're all just hanging, just chatting, getting good advice. I mean, he gave me some good comedy advice. But really we were just talking like friends. We did that. And, Dusty was like, man, this is what I enjoy. Like, this is what I like. It's just like a post-show chill hang, no pressure, nothing, just a couple people, and then we go to bed, And so we went to bed and woke up the next morning, and I mean, I was groggy, I'll tell you that. But we had plenty of time to get to St. Louis. Will left early because he's from St. Louis, so he wanted to go home and spend time back at home before the show. But then Dusty and I, we drove in separate cars because Dusty wanted to smoke his cigars on the way to St. Louis, and didn't think I would want that in my car, which I did not. So we drove separate cars, but we got to St. Louis, and it's actually in Chesterfield, which is outside of St. Louis. It's about a 3-hour drive from Paducah, which, I haven't really driven through a lot of this country. Actually, that was my first time ever in Kentucky. This was my first time ever in Missouri, first time ever to St. Louis. It was really cool going over the Ohio River, this mighty, huge river. I mean, I talked about last week this story of the book about Daniel Boone, and I actually did work that into a joke in Kentucky that I may post at some point. But it was cool Paducah is mentioned in the book. The Ohio River plays a major part in the book. And so we're driving, I drive through southern Illinois. And it was, it's not like the most interesting, beautiful part of the country, but it's still just fascinating seeing just different parts of the country, driving through the Midwest there, getting to St. Louis, going over the rivers there, seeing the arch. I mean, it was all very, very cool. One thing that I thought was really fascinating is that the road the hotel was on was called Boone's Crossing. So Daniel Boone, very much, Kentucky, North Carolina, Tennessee a little bit. He was born in Pennsylvania. He ends up in Missouri. And so there's Boone's Crossing was the road that we were on, which is really cool for me specifically. It was actually just a regular road, but just the fact that like, oh, hey, like this is following me around was really neat. So we get to the hotel in St. Louis, and there's a little issue with my room. I've got to get it switched because I was right by the elevator and it was really, really loud. And so I switch rooms. It kind of throws me off a little bit. I'm running late, getting ready. I have to like rush and shower, grab my clothes, grab my stuff, go out there. Dusty's waiting in the truck, and he wasn't being impatient, but he was ready. I mean, that was the time we were supposed to go. And so throw everything in there. And I'm just a little bit discombobulated getting to that show. But we had an hour, plenty of time before the show started. So we get out there, and it's a very strange setup for a theater. It's got like, it's kind of squared off, and then there's like a pit in the middle that is, there's chairs, and then there's bars under the balcony all throughout the venue. And it's like very, well lit at this point because we're just walking out there before the show, but kind of just disconcerting a little bit, just the setup in general. Like the other theater was like, beautiful, perfect setup. This one I was like, ooh, okay. And I've done one a little bit similar to this with the Center Stage Theater in Atlanta, where the seats are kind of like straight up and they make like a oval. And honestly, it was my least favorite of the three theaters I did, just because the audience, the whole thing is just a little odd when you do that kind of thing. But anyway, so get everything set up, get my camera set up, and then they open the doors early because they've got the bars inside the theater, so they want to start selling the alcohol and stuff inside the theater, as opposed to the other theater, which opened at 6:30 because the alcohol was outside. So, just a little bit of differences in between the theaters, and it's just something you get used to as a performer. But, this is my fifth theater, which thank goodness I've done ones before this, but each place is different. And so I think I'm ready. I've done everything I normally do except one thing. And this, I think, comes into play when I think about it later, when I'm kind of like, what I try to do is evaluate all of my sets and try to figure out, hey, how do I make it better next time? What did I do well? What did I not do well? And when I perform, I always run through my full set multiple times, usually in the car, out loud, get the timing right. Even if it's a set I've done a million times, I just have to do it all the way through, make sure the timing is good, make sure I say everything the way I want to say it, and then I'm good. But then I also write down the full set, just a word basically for each joke in my phone, and I look at that. And that's kind of the mental picture I have. In case I get lost, I'm kind of picturing that set list. But I never bring my phone on stage. I never bring notes. And I do that very intentionally because I think that a comedian who looks at his phone, I think it's the worst habit. I think it takes the audience out of the show. They're like, hey, that guy's looking at his phone. I guess I could do that too. Or this guy's not prepared. And notes are fine. I think if you're a headliner and you're doing a really long set in a club and you are working on some new stuff, maybe that's okay. But if you're doing anything less than 45 or you're in a theater, you should not ever, I think, consult your notes. And I think for the most part, you shouldn't be consulting your notes at all. But I never have notes, and it's a very intentional thing. And so I do a lot of preparation to make sure that I never, forget where I'm at. And, thankfully, so far, that has not happened. But I get out there for the St. Louis show in front of 3,000 people, and immediately I'm a little off. And I can't put my finger on it. I do later figure out what was going on, but I can't put my finger on it. Things just feel off. The audience isn't exactly into it yet. They're not really laughing at the jokes that I know that that normally get laughs, because you're opening up with some of your best material to try to get them on your side, and usually they are by this point, and they weren't. They were a little bit. They were fine, and when I watched the video back, they were fine. But you're so far away from them, you're not hearing the laughter as well. And I had this moment where I remember looking kind of down at the stage, and it was 1 second that felt like 1 hour. And I know it was 1 second because I looked back at the video, and it was literally only 1 second. But the amount of thoughts that went through my head in that 1 second were a million. It was enough to fill an hour. And I remember thinking, I don't know what my next joke is, which I've never done before. And so I literally took a step back, and I did this thing, and I may actually, I'm going to share the video. I'm going to put the video in here. And so if you are listening, you'll hear the audio, but I'll describe what I'm doing. I did like a little silly wave to the audience, just kind of like, hey guys.
Yes, you guys are loving it. Yeah. Well,
And just that little moment that I took got me right back on track. Didn't forget anything else. I went right into the next thing I was supposed to do. And we kept going. And actually got really great from there. And I did a joke about the Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals, that they did not really like, but in a funny way. Like they laughed, but they kind of booed, and then I got them back by explaining that I'm really just a bitter Texas Rangers fan, and I'm bitter about the 2011 World Series, and they really liked that. And we were rolling, and it was really a great set.
but when you've been married this long, people ask you for marriage advice, and I don't have any. Because all the marriage advice I got was just some old guy like, "Hey man, just let her win the argument. She's probably right anyway." Guys, I can't live my life that way. I'm 35 years old. I had to quit all rec league sports because I kept getting hurt. I don't play video games or gamble. And if I beat my 6-year-old son at anything, he cries for 3 hours. An argument with my wife is the only thing I have left to win, okay? And look, I used to win a lot. I used to win the big arguments. I used to win a lot, but I really haven't won a lot lately. Like I used to be good, and I'm not really anymore. I'm like the St. Louis Cardinals of my marriage. Thank you. Don't worry, guys. I'll be honest. I'm a Texas Rangers fan. I'm just still very bitter about 2011. If David Freese is in the audience, I will fight him in the parking lot, okay? Is he here? Okay.
But that moment stuck with me, and I thought, man, I might have blown my chance, or man, I almost blew a huge chance. And when I got off stage, I kind of said to Dusty and the tour manager, I was like, something felt a little off, but I think it was okay. But I, felt a little strange. Did y'all, see anything, or did it feel that way? And they were like, no, we have no idea what you're talking about. You did great. And I was like, okay, cool. And they were like, yeah, you crushed. Okay, great. But I still felt okay. I didn't feel great about it. And I went back and watched the video, and I shared, I played it here. You can't tell. And that's great. And that was a huge lesson learned for me was, you can take a second or 2 seconds, reset, and nobody will notice, especially if you do it in a way that's funny or you just do it as a natural part. I mean, honestly, take a second, drink some water, gather yourself, and you'll be fine. But as I look back at what kind of caused that, number one is I didn't actually write my set. I was doing a little bit different from the night before, just a little bit different just to tailor towards Missouri. And I didn't write that new set down in my notes. And that is part of my process. And I got away from my main process. And so that was a lesson I learned. And I think that's something that you can take into any part of life, which is just stick with your process, especially when you're doing the biggest thing of your life, is do the exact process that got you there. I was feeling very confident after the Paducah show, and I just didn't occur to me. I was like, I got the set. I'll just look at the set and just make a little changes. But the little change, that was where I got a little bit freaked out. It was because it was a little bit different than the night before, so I couldn't be automatic. I had to stop and think about it, and it should have been something that I had written down. So that was the lesson there. But I figured out what really freaked me out when Dusty got on stage, because the first thing he said was, man, it's bright up here. He was like, it is really, really bright. And he kept being like, I feel like it's daylight up here. And I was like, that was what happened. It was so brightly lit on stage and brightly lit in the audience. And so when you're performing, especially in front of that many people, you don't want to see everybody. You don't want to see really anybody, but you especially don't want to see 3,000 people all at once. And I was looking at everybody. And a lot of people were enjoying the set. It was going well, but there were also a lot of people still getting drinks, still sitting down, talking. Like, they're not here to see me. They're here to see Dusty Slice. So they're not all locked in. And I was seeing all of that. And that is what got me in a weird headspace. And that's not an excuse. And again, I think I did handle it well, but it did help me to hear Dusty Slay, who's done a million theaters and is very experienced, point out, hey, something's weird about this setup. And actually, you saw in the video that I shared. If you're listening, I'll describe it. But like that video is pretty much useless because myself, the person on stage, is so washed out by the light that I can't really use that video anywhere. I mean, I'm used to here, and that's about it. And so that was the factors, the like environmental factors that freaked me out. And then also a little bit of odd preparation caused the minor issue. But I'm also like happy to report. And as you can see, like nobody noticed. It went great. And it's just lessons learned to take into the future and continue to get better and do better all the time. And so sold so much merch after that show. I sold out of all the stickers I had. People were giving me money even though it wasn't, even though I didn't even have stickers to sell anymore. They were just giving me cash. I mean, people gave me $100 bill for, a couple stickers, or $50 bills for no stickers. I mean, people were just so generous. I mean, Dusty's crowds are unbelievably nice. And that's a reflection of Dusty himself. After the show, we went to a cigar bar that was in the same shopping center as this theater in Chesterfield, Missouri. And there were a lot of fans there, and they knew Dusty goes to cigar bars after shows, so they figured he'd be there. And they were talking to him, and he's talking to everybody. And eventually the cigar bar owners gave us a little VIP room off to the side, just basically like, hey, like there's nowhere for you guys to sit, and also let you actually chill out. And so it was us and some fans that Dusty had met from his podcast. I mean, they literally, Dusty and these two couples sat and talked about gardening and farming and soil for like a long time. I went over to Will and I was like, we started talking about the Cardinals and baseball and, all this stuff again, or just comedy. But like Will and I talked for a long time because Dusty was spending time with his fans and they were talking about the things they love. And people kept coming in and asking for pictures, and he was very generous with pictures. And then everyone else was generous with him. They were giving him all kinds of cigars. The owner of this cigar bar gave him a bunch of cigars, but so did some fans. And he walked away with lots of cigars. But he picked out our cigar for that night. And let me tell you, it was a lot stronger than the night before. But it was fine. But it was definitely, I liked the sweet one a little better, I'll be honest. But Dusty bought everybody's cigars. He bought everybody's drinks. He bought food. He was like telling people, hey, like, please run this bill up, basically. Like, give me something that I could pay these people for their kindness. And then, he's like, I'm going to tip really well anyway. But he was almost apologetic to the waitress because people weren't buying just a lot of stuff, but he was like, please buy stuff, because he doesn't drink. So he can't really run up a bill via drinks, and it's hard to run up a bill of cigars because you can't smoke that many. But basically, he was just trying to emphasize, like, I want to treat this establishment well for treating me well. I think the main lesson I learned from this whole weekend with Dusty is treat people well. And I try to do that anyway, right? Like, you always try to treat people well, but you don't know how you'll treat people when you become very famous. And I mean, Dusty is famous. Like, when I was with him, we would get lunch and we got, coffee, and people come up to him everywhere. Hey, all right. And he walks in every room and he just goes, all right, and waves at people. And I said, do you do that because they recognize you and you just want to give them a wave? He goes, well, if they don't, then I still just look like a nice guy, which I thought was funny. But he just treats people with such kindness, like whether they're fans or waiters or openers, right? Like, he's just very generous. He's very down to earth. Like, he is famous. He knows he's famous. He likes being famous, but he's not arrogant about it. He has time for people. He's not, spending hours with people in a coffee shop talking to them. But I mean, if they come up to him, he says hello. They talk, and I think he's at the level of fame and the level of familiarity, like people feel familiar with him, that a lot of people don't bother him. They just give him a hello. They go, oh, wow, that's so cool. Great to meet you. Sometimes ask for a picture, and then that's it. There's nothing weird. And he said he likes that. He likes, being well known, talking to people and making people happy when they see him. Like, that's a cool level of fame to be at, that people just get happy when they see you and they move on with their day. You've made their day just by sort of being there. And I think he wields that sort of power really well. But yeah, very, very generous. Paid for my hotels, paid for my meals. Was just and paid me for the shows, and was just a really genuinely cool person to be around. And I met a lot of people in comedy, and I really haven't met anybody that's, just an outright jerk. But I don't think I've met anybody that is as outwardly kind as Dusty is to pretty much everyone. Frankly, the rudest people I've met in comedy are like comedians in Dallas who are like 10 years into it and who think they're a big deal because they sometimes headline shows in Dallas but never get anywhere else. And those are the rudest people I've met in all of comedy, are people going nowhere who are just bitter about it. But I might cut that part out. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to leave it in. But yeah, it was an incredible weekend. We had a lot of fun. Dusty said that I will be able to open for him in Dallas at the Majestic on May 1st, because I happened to already be in Dallas that day visiting family. And he was like, yeah, you can open up. Connor Larson's also going to be on the show, who's a friend of mine, and Connor's so funny, just in person, but obviously on stage too. But yeah, I'm pumped about that. It's already sold out, so there's not really a point in promoting that. But yeah, just did want to say that. But it was one of the most memorable weekends of my life. It was really. I keep saying this with comedy. I said this after I did the show with Nate Bargatze. I said this, probably after my first headlining show, and I'll say it now. It's like, if I never do comedy again, at least I have that. At least I could say I did a weekend on the road in front of thousands of people with one of the most famous comedians in the world, and it went great. And if I somehow I get a notice from the comedy, the government of comedy that says I'm not allowed to do comedy ever again, I'll be like, well, at least I have that, and I can tell my kids I did that, and they can tell people that their dad, got to perform with some old comic with long hair that they probably don't think is cool anymore, but it's cool to me. And so, yeah, that is the weekend with Dusty Slay. I'll probably think of other things that happened over time and pepper those stories in. But really, a lot of fun this weekend. Lessons learned personally, how to best prepare for any kind of gig, and lessons learned for, hey, if I ever get even close to the level of where Dusty is, how to treat people, how to treat your openers, how to treat your fans, how to treat, every security guard. Dusty learned their name, told them thank you, was really, really generous with everybody he was around. And that is a lesson that I want to learn. I try to do that, but I need to do that better now before I ever get anywhere beyond where I'm at. Because if I'm doing that well now, I would do it well if I'm even more successful. And so, just an unbelievable weekend. And we had a good time, folks. All right, it's time for everybody's favorite segment, Wiki Wondering. We're going to do a NASCAR-themed Wiki Wondering today because I'm wearing my Tony Stewart shirt and I'm going to the Bristol race this weekend with my son. It's going to be a brief one, and I'm sure people will know way too much about the subject and think I'm, an idiot because I'm just reading off Wikipedia. But I was on the Wikipedia page of Robbie Gordon, who apparently not related to Jeff Gordon, and boy, some fun stuff. So this is your Wiki Wondering for this week. It's, why does everybody hate Robbie Gordon? So I watched NASCAR for like a couple of years back in the day, maybe like 04, 05, 06. And I was a Tony Stewart fan. That's why I bought this off eBay, because I'm going to wear a Tony Stewart attire to the Bristol race. But something was mentioned about Robbie Gordon the other day. And I was like, you know what? I don't remember. Was he related to Jeff Gordon? And I went to his Wikipedia page. Not related to Jeff Gordon. And you could tell he's not related to Jeff Gordon because he was not very good. 19 years, 3 wins. But what I love is if you're a Wikipedia head like me, what's the best thing ever? You go to a Wikipedia page and you see there's personal life at the bottom, maybe a little bio, then there's some career highlights, but then you see controversies. It's like the Vince McMahon gif, where he's like, yeah, that's the best. If you see controversies, this is a good Wikipedia page. Now, but if you see a controversy section that's like 10 paragraphs long, you've hit the mother load of Wikipedia pages, okay? That's the best. And Robbie Gordon has a longer controversies page than like Kim Jong-un, okay? This thing is detailed, all right? I'm not even going to get into all of it, but it's a fun read. Basically, everybody hates this guy. I mean, the first controversy, it says the race that was delayed by 9/11. I don't know why that's hilarious to me, but like the first thing that's mentioned in his controversy section involves 9/11. Like Robbie Gordon might have had involvement in it. No, but that race, he wrecked Jeff Gordon, who not related to him, and then Jeff Gordon tried to wreck him, and Jeff Gordon got penalized, and Robbie won, and it was Robbie's first career win. He only had 3 wins. One of them was by wrecking Jeff Gordon. But he and Jeff apparently hated each other. Maybe they didn't like that they shared the same last name. But his second win, again, he only won 3 wins. His second win, 2003, he passed his own teammate under caution. So I guess like the caution flag's coming out, he makes a pass, which is not illegal, but they called it ungentlemanly. Passes his own teammate Kevin Harvick. He goes on to win the race. Everyone's mad at him for that too. So he only has 2 wins at this point. Both times, everyone hates him for it. Another time, he got in a wreck with Michael Waltrip, got out of his car and threw his helmet at him. Another time, he threw a roll bar padding onto the track to cause a caution. Okay, so here's my favorite one. In 2007, this is the Napa Auto Parts 200. So this is part of the O'Reilly series, which is like the second tier series. He gets in an altercation with Marcos Ambrose. Gordon passes Ambrose to take the lead at the same time that a multi-car wreck was unfolding behind them. Ambrose spun him under a yellow flag to reclaim it seconds later. After an unusually long delay in sorting out the field for the restart, NASCAR eventually determined that Gordon would restart in 13th position. Gordon, who had a strong race all day, refused to go to that position and was black flagged after the restart. He then spun out Ambrose, and it didn't come in for his penalty, and was then given the black flag with diagonal white cross, which meant that his remaining laps wouldn't count. So NASCAR says you got to start 13th. He's like, nah, I'm not doing that. And then he spins out the leader. And then NASCAR's like, hey, like however many, it doesn't matter how long you stay on the track, your laps are not going to count. He's like, I don't really care. He does the rest of the race. Kevin Harvick wins the race. And he goes and does burnouts next to Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick's celebrating the race, and Robbie Gordon's doing his own burnouts as if he won. Honestly, I'm starting to become a fan of Robbie Gordon. He's hilarious. He might be my favorite new driver. And honestly, I told you that this is like a 10-paragraph controversy section. It's 15 paragraphs long, and some of these paragraphs are huge. And I haven't gotten into the off-road controversies because he's also an off-road driver, and there's lots of controversies there, accusations that he's like cutting the course. This dude is committed to winning races in the most illegal way possible. Huge fan of Robbie Gordon now, but I also understand why everyone hates him. So that was your Wiki Wondering on Robbie Gordon, which is, why does everybody hate Robbie Gordon? Okay, so this is the final segment. I'm just going to tell you, I've talked about this already. I'm going to the Bristol race this weekend. I'm in Bristol, Tennessee. A lot of people have been. They tell me it's super fun. So if you're listening to this and it's before Sunday, please shoot me a message and let me know, what should I do there? Where should I take my son? What are the ways to have the most fun while I'm there in Bristol? That would be really, really helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and end the episode here because it was a longer story about my time with Dusty Slay. I'll see you guys out on the road. Like I said, busy April with other things with travel and things like that. So no shows to announce, but like I said, doing that one with Dusty in Dallas, and then have lots coming up in May that I'll talk about later. But thank you guys for listening. This has been Sunroom Storytime.